Hi there, Rob here, and I'm going to take you through a few steps to help you show enlarged detail on your artwork. So this is a very basic outline for an artwork page, and I'm going to create this detail layer like this. So all I'm doing is enlarging the popper area here just to show the detail and a bit of manufacturer's details here, and it just shows a fairly basic step of how you can produce more pages for your technical packs, showing all your details of your pieces. So I'll just turn off that layer to get started. I'm just going to use this area here. So rather than sort of play around with anything or redraw it, I'm just going to select the area there, hold down the Alt key so I can make a copy, and click and drag just the right hand side there. And I just want to get rid of all the things I don't really need. So I just want to focus on this area with the poppers. So I'll use the scissors tool, which lives in the same block with the eraser tool. Your toolbar might look like this. So grab the scissors tool and I can just click to cut a path. I'll just do it about there, and I can do that on the other side as well. Now I've got lucky there, and it's left the selection as the part of the garment I want to get rid of. So I'll just backspace a couple of times to delete, and now I have the part of my garment that I want to enlarge. Just to be nice and neat, I'll create a new detail layer for this. So and then easy way of moving things onto a layer, if I just drag the little dot there from the, so I've actually got two sets of objects here. The poppers, or the copy of the poppers here, are on this outline front layer. Actually no, they're on the detail front layer. You can see the indicating there, and you see the objects selected just there. And then my other part here, which was part of the original outline, is on this outline front layer. So I can just drag those dots onto my new enlarged detail layer here, and drag that again, and then they'll all be on that one layer there, nice and neat. So all I'm going to do is just select everything, hold down the Shift key as I drag the corner just to enlarge it out. I'll just do that with the other corner, get it to a decent size. Now I've enlarged it, I'll need to do some changes here, make it a little bit neater. But the first thing I'm going to do is show you how to put it into a circle, just cut out. Now you could use the scissors tool and cut everything out, but this is quite a nice way, and it's another technique we'll use in other situations where we're adding fabrics and patterns to our drawings. So what I'm going to do is actually draw myself a circle. I'll go and get the ellipse tool, which lives in with the rectangle. And a circle is a perfectly round ellipse, so if I hold down the Shift key and the Alt key, it'll drag a circle out from the center. So the Shift gives me a circle, and the Alt means it drags from the middle rather than the edge. If you really want to take it to another level, if you want to move your circle while you're drawing it, so all this time my mouse button is actually held down. I've got the Alt key and the Shift key held down, but if I hold down the space bar while I'm doing this as well, I can actually move that circle around. So if I want to reposition the circle, if I let go of the space bar but keep Shift and Alt held down, I can resize the circle. When I'm happy, let go of the mouse first and then the keys, and you can see the circle and how I want to cut everything out. Now there's a number of different ways you can do this. Easiest way is make sure that the circle, so this is the thing that's going to cut everything else out, make sure that circle is on the top of the layer here, on top of everything else. So if I select everything there, you can see everything that layer is selected, and the ellipse is at the top. That's going to do the cutting out in this next stage. So I can either right click and choose Make Clipping Mask, or I can use the Object menu, and the Clipping Mask option is down here, and it's Make. And there's a shortcut for it, Command 7 on the Mac, Control 7 on the PC. So right click, Make Clipping Mask. And what happens is the top object in that group, as you can see in the Layers panel now, has actually cut out everything else underneath. Now, as part of this process for making a clipping group, the object that does the cutting out gets turned into an invisible object. It doesn't have any stroke, it doesn't have any fill. If you want to go and add the stroke back afterwards, you can just select the ellipse or whatever the shape is on its own and go back into your stroke panel and just give it another stroke. And there we go. So if you want to select individual parts of this, you can just select that using the donut on the layers panel, or if you click on it with the black selection tool, move the whole thing around. And all I need to do really is show whereabouts on my piece that this enlargement detail comes from. So I'll just draw a straight line from there to there. You can, just for an extra bit of neatness, if you draw the line to the center of your circle, and then you can use the scissors tool just to snip on the actual circle itself and just get rid of that extra bit in the middle. It looks slightly neater if the line goes towards the center of the circle. If you're using a circle, it's a little bit of extra finesse. You don't have to worry about it. If you want to go and stick an arrow on the end of this line here in the stroke panel, choose an arrowhead. Personal favorite of mine is number 9 because it looks the least ugly, and I can also scale the size of the arrow head in relation to the rule there. And if I go in a bit closer, if I want to rearrange the line, white direct selection tool, and just select that and just point that in there. I can point to the object here, or I can just point at that area. Zoom out, and there I have my detail change. Now you want to add extra detail in here because there's no point just enlarging the thing here. So the next step will be to change all your detail. You might want to add some stitching. You might want to reshape this to make it less of a harsh curve here. It would be like naturally with fabric, it would actually be a bit of a curve here. So I've got the direct selection tool. That will allow me to select parts within this clipping group. So I've got this clipping group that's made up of the outline and the poppers and everything. So if I go and click on each one of these bottom two, I'll shift click on the next one, these bottom 2 points. Notice how and these little round corner icons appear. This is a new feature that appeared in later versions of Adobe Illustrator Creative Cloud. If you're running with a CS6, you can't have access to this. In the later versions, the Creative Cloud versions, with each of those points selected, I can just drag on that little rounding icon there, and it'll just round off those corners. It automatically puts in the curve for me. As long as I've got both of those selected, it'll move them both equally. If I select more than one, it'll move them all together. If I select any one, it'll only move those. Now maybe I want to add some stitching in here as well. Now rather than using the direct selection tool, I can actually use the group selection tool, which lives in the same space, and that will allow me to select an object from within a group. So there, I've selected that object there, and to get some stitching on the inside, I'll just use an offset path. So object path, offset path, and I'll preview that. Now at the moment I've got a very large positive offset of 11mm. I want the offset to be inside this line, so if I just change the offset to be minus, I'll have a guess. I'll see if -1 works. If I press the tab key, that will update the preview there. Now it's in the right place, but it looks a bit too thick and horrible, so I'll accept that, and all I need to do is go and change that to a dashed line with a stroke panel. I'll make it a lighter weight, so if I take it down for this, maybe 0.35, that looks reasonable, and I'll make it into a dashed line. I might have got lucky there and my dashed line is actually a reasonable running stitch there, but if I go back in there, if you change the amount here for the dash, that will change the length of the dash here, and the gap will be the size of the gap here. Although if, like me, you've got rounded caps on your dashes and your lines, they will extend slightly over the end here, so you will actually get a slightly smaller gap because of the rounding going over here. So all that remains for me to do is to label this. So as I'm doing a detail for specifications, I'll add in an extra arrow in here, and it's kept the same format for my stroke, so I can go back. I can either use a line style that I've already got set up, or I can just go use the stroke panel, and I'll pop that in there. I'll add myself an arrowhead and just change the scale in there. Make it a bit smaller in fact as well. It's a bit better. So now all I need to do for the final part is just to draw myself a text box. So I will go and get the type tool here, the letter T, draw a square with it, and inside and that would be the kind of thing you would put in there. Use a consistent size and typeface for all your labeling. That's probably a little bit too big. These details can also be added if you're doing a specification sheet, and these would refer to these items there. If I zoom out a little bit there, just check maybe my lines are a little bit thick on the stitching, so I can go in there with the group selection tool, select that one object as part of the group. I'll just take the stroke down a little bit lighter there. But again, make sure you're using consistent stroke weights for stitching on different for different pictures. If you're doing an enlargement, then you'll be adding more stitching. You might want to use a thicker weight on an enlarged detail, but if you're doing multiple enlarged details, make sure you're using consistent stitches and line thicknesses across the board just to keep it nice and even there. And there we have it. All I'd need to do now is just to go back into my layers panel here and label all of these additional layers, just so I know all these objects, so I know what they are. On to the next stage.